Welcome back. At a time when many people think we are at an all-time low when it comes to race relations, there is a psychology professor that wants us to realize that we're really not all that different. In the 70s, he had an idea at University of North Florida to have students, both black and white, candidly discuss racism, stereotyping, and ignorance. The class was small, with even representation of race and gender. Students spent a weekend at a black university. They also had a 7-day homestay with a family of a different race. Now, keep in mind, this is in the 70s. They've had 2 reunions where students come together to talk about how this experience all those years ago really has changed their lives. So there's another reunion scheduled this weekend. Joining me now, we have the professor, Dr. Peter Krantz, who came up with the idea, Dr. Witherspoon, who participated in the study back in 1977. Dr. Krantz, I want to start with you because this was unthought of. You know, you said you came with this idea. You wanted to do the class, human conflict, black and white, and the university was like, all right, let's do this and see what happens.
Well, let me begin. In 1970, I was very fortunate to be in a training class with Price Cobbs, who was one of the co-authors of Black Rage. And from that experience, I brought some terrific techniques. And when I interviewed at the University of North Florida, they had what they called a venture study program, where professors could create classes that were relevant to time and place. Mm-hmm. And I said, what would be more relevant in Jacksonville at that time than do a class in race relations?
Take us back. What was the climate like at that time here in Jacksonville?
Well, from what I understand, when I'm going back, Jacksonville was just going through the throes of integration. They had gone through some very difficult moments before in segregation. And so I was coming into a new university that promised some real changes. Mm-hmm. And so I jumped on that. And my feeling was, if we're going to do a class that's going to be very meaningful in race relations, it's got to be different than the usual class of just sitting there reading a textbook and having exams.
Right. Let me ask you, because yes. I was reading, and you've been profiled on other television stations, national publications. First, you got people up. You asked them some questions, their racial perceptions, put it on the blackboard, and people were kind of quiet. You know, at first they didn't necessarily want to talk. You were like, let's confront this. You were in the class in 1977. What got you talking? Because at first you are a little shy. You're like, well, I feel this way. Is that wrong? Is that right?
Well, I will say Dr. Krantz really set the tone for the class because he was adamant that we were not going to hide behind the issue. So I think that what got us talking is the fact that he pushed and coerced us to address the issues by placing our myths on the board and having us address those. And
it was a safe space. You know, there were no retribution. You know, people were able to be free. And also the idea back in like 1972, 74, going to live with someone of an opposite race. I mean, that's unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
It was challenging.
Yeah.
It was. And you said you talked about, you know, you went to church with your family and they were surprised that you knew the hymns and, you know, and they're like, oh, wow, you're really not that different than us.
Well, not only that, the thing that really impacted me the most when I walked into their home, they had a son that was 4 years old at the time, and he had Down syndrome. His name was Johnny, and I just fell in love with him. Mm-hmm. You know, I really integrated very easily into the family, and they lived on the beach, so we went riding bicycles, we talked at dinner time. Everything was just, it was very easy to acclimate.
Right. And this is something you would kind of like to see rekindle today, you think, and I think we all would agree, very relevant to today.
Yes, I think it's very important with what's going on in our country racially today. I think it would be very meaningful and important to bring this class back at a variety of institutions. And as students have suggested, even started earlier than the college and university, maybe at the junior high, elementary level, etc. So students of differences could really spend quality time with each other to getting to know each other.
Right. And then as they grow up, we may see some changes from that 1 week, that one experience. Thank you all for coming in. We could talk about this much longer. You guys have your reunion this weekend. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. And then also trying to get the community to embrace this and maybe see this replicated in some different ways. All right, if you guys missed any part of this interview or if you'd like to know more about the professor here, you can go to news4jax.com. You'll find it all on the morning show page.